Okay, so my name is Ben Macklin. I came here from northern Minnesota to talk to all of you guys today about becoming the Elderberry Guy. So you've learned a lot, hopefully, if you listen, about how to grow elderberries. Right now, you're going to learn a little bit about how not to grow elderberries, because I've done that. Not grow them. So I'm going to talk about my journey, or the last 3-4 years of my life, about starting and running what so far seems to be a successful elderberry endeavor. We have a value-added products business, and we have the farm, and both of them have seen ups and downs. And so the kind of the emotion I want to get across, and I've seen a lot of elderberries are easy. They're like raspberries, right? You just throw them on the ground, they grow. Next thing you know, you're making money and you're doing well. It's not always the case. And I think a lot of people get into this business with the idea that they'll grow really easy. Once they grow, you'll get berries really easy. And then once you get berries, you'll be able to get rid of those berries really easy. And you really have to be your own advocate in this. So we're gonna go through my presentation. Maybe not as polished. This is more about listening to my story. So interaction is encouraged. If you have questions, stop me and ask. I don't know that I have enough material for the whole time slotted. Usually when I say that, people are telling me to stop talking, it's time to go to the next person. So we'll see. But if you have questions, stop me. I'll answer anything. This is kind of about what it's like to start a business like this from my perspective. And I've kind of turned into that elderberry guy. And I don't know, we've used social media to a large extent to market our business. And I have a lot of people that come up to me and say, hey, you're that elderberry guy from TikTok. So I've adopted. So the first thing is you have to figure out, first I want to ask a question. Who in here right now grows elderberries? Not everybody, but most. Okay, of the people that don't grow, do you know what your plans are? Do you want to grow 20 plants to have enough elderberry juice, or who in here wants to grow an acre or more for commercial use? Most everybody else. The rest of the people probably like, that's why I'm here, figure this out. So of the people that grow, is there anybody that doesn't grow that makes a value-added product? Nobody. So of the people that grow an acre or more, it could be a half acre, whatever, do you make value-added products? So it's one, two, three, me. So there's a couple of people.
What do you mean by that?
Value-added products, syrups, anything with the elderberry that you want to sell to other people for profit. Juice can do it. Yep. So not that many. So how many are thinking about doing that? More, right? Okay. So this might be valuable to you. My journey. So the first one is, why do you want to do this? Do you just want to make a quick buck? If you do, this might not be the way to do it. I'm sorry. I don't want to break your heart, but it's tough. Making elderberry syrup, everything is heavy. Everything is manual at this point. Honey, if you're using that as a sweetener, is hard to come by sometimes. It's very heavy. It's so planning. You heard a lot about planning from different people, financial planning, farm planning, all that stuff. It's all very important. I did next to none of it. I have from the start focused on creating a farm business that would so I did this to allow my family. That was my original why. I wasn't so good at communicating it to my family. This is why I'm doing this. And if you want to know what ADD looks like in a 50-year-old man, this is it. I come up with ideas, I come up with visions, and I start doing them. I don't necessarily communicate to the people around me what those visions are. I just expect them to get it, right? So communicate to the people in your life what your plan is. Your life will be a lot easier. You'll get a lot more upfront support from them. But that's my why. To be able to create a life where my family can spend more time together and create something in the process. And this is my daughter. She's my, she helps. She likes to go to the vendor shows. She likes to be at the farm, not necessarily work at the farm. But she really digs going out. She digs interacting with people. It's kind of neat to watch her grow. So that's my why. I have another one. There would be a picture on her, but she does not like pictures, and she forbade me. So sort of the timeline of my journey starts with, I would say in the last 10 years, I've started to establish a food forest at my house. Cherries, plums, raspberries, you name it, I kind of got it all. And in that food forest was a bundle of elderberries from our conservation district. I think I paid $25 for 25 bare root plants of, the nondescript seedlings. And I planted them, not really knowing what they were. And then we'll go into COVID-19. What we're not going to talk about with COVID-19 is politics. We're not going to talk about what you think or what I think. But it is an important part of my journey, and if it wasn't for COVID-19, I would not be here in this room. I'd have some elderberry plants in my front yard, and that's what they would be and nothing more. We're going to talk about the journey about starting to make syrup, moving through facilities, making our syrup, getting serious, buying some land, upgrading our facilities. This is mostly going to be a series of pictures. They're going to work as note cards for me. If you have questions about any of the issues I had, how I got over them, and I'm not explaining that through monologue, ask me directly so we can stop and talk about dialogue, because I think everybody will benefit from it. So my food forest, right? I started with all the stuff people get, the perennials that everybody loves and enjoys, and one of them ended up being elderberries. And here they are. This is in my front yard. This is about 50 feet out my front window. I planted them as a hedge. I thought they'd be a nice dust collector when I bought them, and whatever grew on them, maybe I'd figure out something to do with it. And now we get to COVID-19, right? I'm no expert on COVID-19, but this is the cure. Who doesn't get this? Is there anybody? Oh my gosh, really? That means I'm getting old. Have you never heard The Cure? It's a band. It's like one of the best new wave bands from the 80s and 90s. Anyway. Yes. So again, we're not going to talk about the politics involved with COVID. We're just going to talk about my perspective briefly, and then we're going to move on. I was laid off briefly as a corporate safety manager. Tried to explain to my boss that laying off the corporate safety manager in a global pandemic, regardless of people's views on that pandemic, maybe wasn't the best optics. But I would enjoy my time off. I've saved. I have enough money to live and enjoy my time. But they said, no, we got to lay people off, and this is what we're doing. And so I had a lot of time to sit on the couch and research. I became mildly, as some people might say, compulsively obsessive with elderberries. One day I was Googling along. I didn't really like what I was hearing on the news and from the government and everything, and I was looking for alternative methods of health and wellness, maintenance. And so I came up with elderberries. And so I watched video after video, YouTube video. Many of the people in this room, you seem so familiar to me, even though you probably don't know me one bit. I feel like we really know each other because I watched your videos like 37 times. So that was my experience with COVID, and I eventually went back to work. They realized after, I think it was a month or so, they're like, yeah, not so good optics to lay off the safety guy. But so that's how I landed on COVID, and I started making elderberry syrup on my kitchen stove, and I ended up with something like this. And who all has done this? Has anybody done this or bought this from the farmer's market or something? This is where I started. I think the very first batch was made off of that row of elderberries, and that didn't make very much. So then I had to buy more. But I made this, I really liked it, and I gave some to my in-laws against my better judgment. But I gave some to my in-laws and friends and cousins, and they gave, and next thing you know, I was making for my extended family. And then people started calling me and saying, hey, can we get some of that elderberry syrup? So I made more, and I made more, and I made more. And it got to a point to where I was making elderberry syrup almost every day on my kitchen stove in a blue ball, pot. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I either gotta tell these people no, they've gotta, they can Google elderberry syrup, they can get it somewhere else. But they really liked mine, and I was local, and you weren't supposed to leave your house and all that. So somebody's like, well, you can go into the Legion, and you can make it in there. Get some bigger pots, get some stuff and some things, right? So I bought a small press. This is the, is there a laser pointer on here? That's the first press I bought. My advice to you is don't buy that press. don't do it. It's cheap, it works, it got me through, but spend just a little bit more money. We bought some bottles. I think I stole this. I think those are the same bottles that Terry Dura buys. But and then I got more pots, right? Oh no, what happened? So I got
your bottles off Alibaba?
no, I get them off Tricor Braun. To make it worth it, you got to buy a pallet at a time. They only sell by the pallet. I tried Birch. I tried all the popular ones that when you put in Google, and they're just really expensive with shipping and everything. Tricor Braun, depending on the volume you buy and the type of bottle you buy, you can get really good prices. Tricor, Tricoreburan, I believe. And now that's going to be on everybody's Facebook feed, by the way. So if you didn't catch it, it'll be there in about an hour and a half. Zuckerberg will make sure that happens. But anyway, so ask me any questions about where I get stuff, whatever. Nothing. I mean, I found it all on Google, most of it anyway. So this was phase 1 upgrade, right? The American Legion in Clearbrook, Minnesota. We quickly grew out of this because I soon became the underground supplier of elderberry syrup in Clearwater County, Minnesota. Completely unlicensed. Completely illegal. Don't tell me. Nobody's gonna see this, right? So I was making for friends and family, and we quickly grew out of this. The issues here were logistic, right? I shared this with the fire department. I shared this with the American Legion, and I shared this with a pipeline company that did all of their morning meetings and safety meetings. None of those people clean up after themselves very well. So I had to spend an hour and a half cleaning this place up before I used it, and then an hour and a half cleaning it up after I used it. Because if I left a little bit of purple, I don't know, you ever made elderberry syrup? It's really purple, and it's hard to hide. And so, anyway, so this is where we started. This was phase 1, and this kind of got us to where we started to think about making this a business, but we weren't really there yet. We were unlicensed. We were selling mostly to friends and family and friends of friends and family, but nothing online, nothing, it's probably still illegal, but it is what it is. That's how we got where we are. It's a very small space, wasn't set up very well, and it was shared by other people, so it was hard. Then I came up with an idea. I don't know nothing about farming. I grew up in Southern California in the suburbs, but there's farm ground everywhere. Why not start a farm? And so I bought some cuttings from Terry Durham at River Hills Harvest. I bought an acre's worth of Ranch and Adams cuttings. I didn't even have land to put it on. I knew it was going to go somewhere. It was December, and I had about 4 months to figure out where I was going to put elderberry cuttings. So I don't know if you're seeing a trend here. I do a lot of things before I think them through, and my advice to you is do just a little bit less of that. There is some value in not getting stuck in analysis paralysis and learning through action, but you'll see, there's more, it doesn't end here. So it was either going on my neighbor's land. She said I could take some spots, or a spot of land there, and it would have been good. I was going to rent that from her, or my brother-in-law's land, and he is a full-time real rancher farmer, but he is my in-law, And I don't know if anybody's ever had problems with their in-laws before, but that was a little, to me, I was like, but that's probably where they were gonna land, is my brother-in-law's land. And then all of a sudden, one day, my brother-in-law calls me and he says, hey, some land just came up, you might wanna look at it. But it's really expensive, you can't pay that much. Of course I just bought it. And so is everybody kind of from this area? For the most part. What does an acre of land cost down here?
Years ago or today?
Average cost today? $5 to $6 grand. I overpaid at $2,500 an acre. I bought 35 acres, and everybody told me I was crazy. You're gonna go broke. Well, now I've owned the land for 4 years. I think this would be my 4th land payment this year. Land next to me just sold for 32, so I made a good decision. At least I made money on my land so far. What? They are not making any more land. You're right. So now we had a home, right? So these cuttings that have been sitting in the refrigerator since late December, early January, finally had a home to go to. And this is my slice of paradise. This is Popple Tree Creek Farms in northern Minnesota. And I had to do a zoom in because we finally made Google Earth. For the last several years, I had to look at this and say, gosh, when are we going to exist? But we finally made it. We're on Google Earth. So that is us right there. We're in between a lake and a small lake here that's like a non-fishable slough type, what we would call slough type lake. It's about 5 feet deep. It doesn't have any fish in it, but there's lots of reeds around it for all the birds to stay right before they get full on my elderberries. Site placement was. But sometimes you don't get to choose where your farm is. You buy land that's available, and then you figure it out later. So we got an early thaw that year. We planted, I want to say we planted April 26th, and usually ground doesn't thaw well into May up where I live. So I loaded up my Cub Cadet rototiller because that's how all the best rows are made, right? I did not put any amendments in the soil. I had elderberries that were already in the refrigerator too long. I got together all my best workers, my nieces and nephews and my daughters, and we made rows. I made the rows with the Cub Cadet. They went behind me and planted, sticks in the ground, and I gave them strict instructions: 2 feet on center. While I make the rows, you plant behind me. After about 75% of the rows are made, they catch up to me, and they have about half of the sticks left, and I'm like, something's not happening out here. And my one nephew is like, well, I thought it'd be a lot better if we just spaced some of them out 5 feet instead of 2 feet. I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, if I was paying you, I wouldn't be paying you to think. So I ended up with a little more than an acre, and we backfilled some, but it all, it worked. And then I had my brother-in-law come out with a hay buster to give us some mulch. And if you're ever going to consider doing this, I'm going to stop you right here, right now. Do not ever do this. This is literally the worst way to mulch your elderberries. For one, it's inconsistent. For two, putting 12 inches of hay on top of your fresh elderberry cuttings is going to do nothing but kill your elderberry cuttings. They're not going to get water, they're not going to get light, they're not going to get heat. So don't do that. So then I had to go back and move it out, and I don't know if you're noticing something else I don't have. Can anybody tell me what I don't have on my rows? I don't have any water. I don't know how many people told me, don't plant your elderberries until you have a plan for water. Whatever. It's wet. It's northern Minnesota. The place is a swamp. So 2021, we had what I think they called it a 150-year drought. Best time to start farming, right? So, and when we planted, some of the rows were muddy. They were hard to till. So I was confident, yeah, they'll grow. They're fine. So after we planted, it just never rained, right? And then This was our backup plan.
Oh my God.
And so if this is in your plan, I'm gonna save you some heartache and pain. Don't do this. It makes really cool pictures, and kids like riding on the back of trucks. This might be good for a good application for fertilizer or amendments or something like that, but this is not a good way to provide the sole source of water to your elderberry plants. There's a lot of stuff in the creek you don't want, plugs everything up. It's not a good way to go, but that's what we did. And every week, it's gonna start raining. Well, it never rained. Then weeds grow really well when it's dry. I don't know if you know that. But so we had weed competition issues, we had water issues, and so then I thought, I've got a little bit of redneck in me. I'll make a gravity feed drip system. And it worked okay, but not really. And I ended up you kind of can't see the pump. I ended up hooking a pump to it, and I bought, that's a few slides down. I ended up buying an anhydrous tank. And so we progressively get better at being dumb before we make decisions. And the thing is, at this point, I'm not supporting my family on this, right? I have a full-time job, my wife has a full-time job, we both make decent incomes. So this is really a dream, a hope and a dream. So I'm not on food stamps because I'm doing this. So I'm just trying to show you all the things I tried to do to go cheap the first time. And the idea that if this year is like every other year for the past 10 years in Minnesota, and I'm gonna tell you that the day you make a bad plan is the day the norm changes on you. And Murphy shows up and ruins everything. So this was our gravity fed system. It worked okay, but it was difficult to get enough water to what ended up being almost 2 acres. So we hooked up a pump, and the problem with the pump in creek water is it just kept plugging up, and you'd have to flush and plug and flush, and so it was a hassle. So while that's all going on, the syrup starts to become more popular. I end up getting licensed, and I want to take a second to talk about that for a second. I don't know what it's like in Missouri, but in Minnesota we have 2 different licensing systems for value-added products. One is a wholesale license for selling to businesses that resell your product, and one is a retail license that is for selling from me to you. If I have a retail license, I can sell wholesale. If I have a wholesale license, I can sell retail. Made it make sense. I couldn't. What I couldn't do is I couldn't get licensed because in Minnesota, well, I don't think anywhere, but so there's no approved process for making elderberry syrup. Meaning you can't go to the Blue Ball Canning Book and have them tell you, and so you have to go through process authority and then go through licensure. Even if you're doing cottage foods, which you can do, you still have to do all the stuff that you would have to do for licensure. So Minnesota couldn't figure out what they wanted me to do. It took me a year to get licensed. I ended up having to throw a hissy fit with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. They kept bouncing me from inspector to manager to supervisor, and then finally one day I called up, and so the point here is, in anything you do, especially with elderberries, you have to be your most vocal advocate, because all these other people, as well-meaning as they are, they have other lives, right? So you have to push you through. So I called the head manager at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture one day, and I said, look, we've been going back and forth with this for just about a year now. What do you want me to do? And he says, it's just not that easy. Like, I figured out it's not easy, but I need to get licensed. I'm gonna get licensed, and your job is to license me. And he started explaining to me why they couldn't figure out what they wanted me to do. And so I asked him if he was by a computer, and he said, yeah. I said, okay, go to Etsy, search elderberry, filter for Minnesota. And he's like, okay. And I said, how many elderberry syrup advertisements do you see? And he's like, a lot. I said, okay, how many of those have you licensed? And he's like, okay, I get your point. I said, look, I'm trying to do the right thing here, and you're the problem. What are you gonna do about it? He's like, somebody will call you tomorrow. Tomorrow, a guy called me, he said, I want you to file wholesale. The inspector's gonna call you for an appointment, and within a week, I had a provisional license waiting on the real one to come in the mail. So the point is, if you run into barriers, there's a lot of people and resources to lean on, but at the end of the day, you have to be your own bulldog. If you wanna make it happen, if you want it to happen, you have to make it happen, because there's a lot of people that just have a lot going on in their lives. So that's what we did. We got licensed, and then we're making it Legion. We had a website now, and we were shipping a couple of orders a week. We were going to the small town vendor shows. We were selling 20 to 40 bottles, there. And then one day, yeah, most of it was meetup and delivery, right? One day, we have what I call the Carolyn Reed event. My brother and sister-in-law, who live in central Illinois, are really good friends with Tony and Carolyn Reed. And I don't know how much time you guys spend on TikTok, but if you've ever heard of Growing Corn 2020, that's Tony Reed, Carolyn Reed's husband. So she asked for some elderberry syrup. We sent her some elderberry syrup. Not like I think she bought the bottle, but we might have just sent it to her. And I didn't even really know she was doing TikTok. I didn't really know him that well. Drank beer with him a couple of times. But when we visited the in-laws, well, she does a TikTok on her elderberry syrup. I'm on a business trip out of town, and my phone starts going ding, 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 and I'm like, I look and it's the website. Sale, you got a sale, you got a sale. My wife texts me, she's like, do you see what's happening? I'm like, yeah, well, I don't even have that many boxes. So we ended up in one day, I had 250 orders in one day, between 1 and 4 bottles. I didn't have that much syrup on hand. I had to drive around to all of the post offices in my county and the next county to get enough boxes. I had to it was ridiculous. And I had to get on TikTok and say, hey, everybody who ordered syrup from me, it's gonna be a couple of days. I'm on a business trip. And so then we came back and we got the family together. We all had this big boxing frenzy, and we made it happen. We had to make syrup to make the orders. And so then we were like, okay, let's buy some more equipment. So we started to see more of that, right? I'll get into a little bit. We quickly grew out of our commercial kitchen, but this became kind of a norm, right? This is a store we're in, it's a boutique shop. And right now we kind of stick to that, right? We stick to small grocery stores and boutiques, vendor shows, and then TikTok probably makes up 90% of our sales. And I'll talk about TikTok more here in a little bit. So we, as orders started to come in and started to be more consistent, we moved to another commercial kitchen, because we started complaining about one we're in, and somebody's like, oh, don't you know that the Clearwater's Life Center has a really nice kitchen? I was like, oh, that'd be nice to know a year ago. But so we moved into a nice kitchen. We made some agreements with them on usage and price and everything. So we have a much better kitchen. It's got much better flow. And we bought some more equipment. We got some more training. We already had our license before the picture was taken. But the one thing you have to be careful of is spending money. Yes?
Is this still your 2 acres?
Oh yeah, I have not harvested a single elderberry yet.
Okay.
This is a big year for us. So I planted in 21, everything died. Planted in 22, got good drip irrigation, got good water, and then we had a pretty wet year in 22. I ended up getting a well halfway through. Well, I wanted to get a well in the spring, but just like everything else in this world right now, if you want a well, you call the well guy last year. So I got my well in the middle of 22, and we were able to get water on them enough in the beginning of 22 between rain and my redneck system. that when the well got in, you know, we were able to skip a beat. Everything, we had berries last year, but we didn't take anything. I pinched most of my berries so the plants would grow. I left just enough flowers on the plants to kind of judge growth and development and stuff like that. I let some friends take some, I let the birds take the rest. This year will be our first, go ahead.
Where did you get was it hard to find people to buy berries from to make all this?
So I live on the dark side. I buy dehydrated European berries right now. I know. So when we first started, that's kind of, I didn't really know about all this. And so that's what we made our product from. And where we live, the shipping cost is horrendous. This is the whole reason why I started the farm. My goal is to transition out of European berries into American elderberries. And so that I can produce enough of my berries to lower the cost of buying balanced berries from other people when I have to. Right now, because of the price of berries and because of the cost of storage and shipping, it wouldn't make sense for my business. Plus, I have so many customers that are accustomed. I'm actually scared to switch my recipe on the two products that I have right now because I have so many customers that really like it. So I haven't figured out, I mean, eventually it's gonna happen because I don't wanna buy European berries anymore. It's just, our business model is to switch and they'll have to get used to it, I guess. But yeah, that's where I buy them from Greystone online, like a lot of people do it. What I did different than some people, and it's probably, I don't know if you guys have ever ordered elderberry syrup off the internet. I actually worked with a food consultant to make an end juice product that tested like fresh juice. I use a lot more berries, I use a lot less water, and I press for a long time. Most of the stuff you buy online, unfortunately, is mostly water. A lot of the people that poo-poo my stuff online, a lot of stuff they'll attack is there's no way, and you can tell the ones, if they don't tell you how much elderberry is in their elderberry, it's for one of two reasons. Either they don't know or they don't want you to know, right? And so I've had people say, well, he's lying. He can't know how much elderberry is in his elderberry syrup. And how that even makes sense to somebody, I have no idea, but it is what it is, right? If you focus on what other people are doing with your business, whether it's your plan is to sell wholesale products or wholesale berries to Dave or somebody like me, if you're worried about what the other farm is doing, you've already failed, right? You're your best advocate to develop your vision forward. You know, let everybody else figure out what you're doing. So yeah, we started to grow our business. Like I said, we do use European elderberries. Now that we've got that out of the way, but we do have a plan to amend our sins. So we moved up. We're in a bigger commercial kitchen. I'm still working full-time at this point. I work a full-time job, albeit I'm a corporate safety manager, so I have a pretty cushy life. I do travel a little bit, but we start adding in more sales, right? We get out to the vendor shows, and last year is when it really started to get big around summertime. I started going to the juried vendor shows, and then at the same time is when we really got into TikTok. I think we started doing TikTok last year, but then they opened up TikTok Shop. And then it just got crazy. We started doing these, and if you stick to the juried shows, they're harder to get into, they cost more money, but they have a lot more sales traffic. And they're a lot further from my house. So then we introduced business traffic. This is just a reminder to talk about TikTok. We started seriously getting into TikTok last summer, and we had some videos go viral, and since we started TikTok, we've been selling in the busy months, which are between the end of August and February, we sell anywhere between 100 and 200 bottles of elderberry syrup a day, just on TikTok. But it's not easy. If we're making all of this in that little commercial kitchen you just saw, it's me, my wife, my 11-year-old daughter, and my 15-year-old daughter. Occasionally, it's a couple of cousins and an aunt and an uncle mixed in the mix. Right now, so that's how we're supporting this business. My wife works full-time, I work full-time. Summer comes along, I'm doing 2 to 4 vendor shows a month, sorry. You only get so much PTO at work, and so I'm balancing PTO. I'm working from 5 o'clock in the morning till it's time to take the girls to school. I work a full day, I come home, I work till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then the idea starts to creep into her head. Maybe we just quit our jobs. And so I tried to float to my wife, she quits her job first. Because I had the health insurance, I make more money. But on the other side, I do most of the stuff. I do all of the farm work. And she's like, I don't think I could run the business by myself without you as good as you do right now. So it would be a detriment. So she decides, for me, I'm gonna quit my job. And so we decide to pull the plug December 15th of last year. And I thought, okay, now I'm self-employed, I'm gonna have all this time. That was another misconception I had. And also another place I probably could have pre-planned my life a little better. So I had a cushy desk job that in retrospect, I look back and I did most of my administrative work at work, right? So now business is up. I work probably anywhere from 10 to 16 hours a day. And the more you work, it seems like the more work there is, because the more your word gets out that you exist, the more people are curious, or what they like, they buy, and then their friends buy, and then, so now we're looking at, my wife is gonna quit her job in May, so now we have to figure out that dynamic, right? How are we we're looking at bringing on help, but we don't wanna do that until she gets there. She gets here at the end of the school year, she runs a daycare. She's gonna quit, and then we're gonna figure out, who's gonna own what processes are gonna help each other, marketing and business development and social media. If you want to sell anything to other people that aren't business to business, other private human beings, and you're scared of social media, I'm gonna tell you, it's gonna be a hard road hoe, no pun intended. Social media is where it's at. If you're not comfortable talking to people, or being on camera, or doing all the social media things, you're gonna have a hard time. It's gonna be harder than when I planted all those elderberries with no water and no mulch. We sold elderberry syrup word of mouth at a good hobby level, right? But now I sell enough to support my family, but if I wasn't doing social media, I wouldn't be. And that's just where people are. So you have to get out of comfort zones, right? If you want to market that way, or you can spend a lot of money marketing the traditional way. And if you look at all the studies, there's diminishing returns on traditional marketing, and there's appreciating returns on social media. My marketing spend is 99% time and effort. Occasionally, I spend money on TikTok ads, on Facebook ads, but I find the random viral video I get gets me way more in aggregate than spending money on their advertising. I wish that they would figure it out. And I don't, does anybody in here, who in here markets anything through social media? I know you guys do. How much money do you spend? I don't know, tell me how much money you have, but how much money you spend. Do you have a budget for social media marketing? No? I've tried to spend more money on social media marketing, and I'm not as successful as just throwing videos out every single day. I wish they would change that. I would think if I could spend $100 or $1,000, I could reach 1,000 more or 10,000 more people, but it's just not that way. And for the life of me, I have no idea why they could be making so much more money. But anyway, social media is a whole job in and of itself. And depending on how involved you want to get with your videos, there's taking the video footage. There's a joke, that goes around. Everything is content. Like, I've taken pictures, like I'm video recording this, I'm going to chop this up into a million ways for a million different TikToks. I took some videos and pictures while we were out there on the way here when I was at the Hagenhoffs, and little snippets will make it into different things. And if you're not comfortable doing that, it's really hard to market on social media. All the younger people are on social media, so I guess the point of the story is social media has been a very big part of our success at this point. And I think it has allowed me to fail and lift it up, to cover up all the failures I've had. But most importantly, being consistent and not stopping at your failures too. I don't know if you guys have noticed, I've failed a couple of times. I've failed at social media. I've deleted accounts. I'm like, crap, what do we do? You just start over and do it again. If in this business, and this, like I alluded to in the beginning, if you're a grain farmer or a cattle farmer, there's associations, there's lobbyists, there's government people just waiting to hand you money. They're not lining up, in Minnesota anyway, they're not lining up at the door to throw money at elderberry farmers. You've really got to make it all happen yourself. It's there, the help is there, but you've got to advocate for it, and you can't stop. So, at this point, this is starting to turn into a second job. I kind of spilled the beans, I quit my job, but we're leading up throughout this summer last year, getting really heavily involved in social media, investing time and effort into the website, making our order processing better, buying more equipment, buying better boxes, refining our processes, and then vendor shows. You got to get out in front of people. You can't rely, or at least I can't, rely on online orders this time of year. Right about February is where people quit caring about their health. They're like, it's like up there, it's still, like I just looked on Weather Channel, it's 21 degrees at home right now. But here, people are outside, they're living life. They're not stuck inside. So once it starts to warm up, and I can watch my order addresses, and they march north until right about February. They kind of go right in the diver, and then that's when you got to get out, in front of people. You spent all winter, shipping orders. Now it's time to get out and talk to the masses. Vendor shows. We started getting into bigger and better vendor shows, doing stuff like this, talking to people. You always have to advocate. And what I find, there's two types of people that do this. There's the people that buy the berries like I buy, and the water them down and make a quick buck, and they're not worried about educating people because they really don't want you to look into their product. And then there's the people like all of us in here that are passionate, right? We want people to know what elderberries are, what the benefits are, what to look for in good elderberry, how to make it, how to spot it, what to do with it. And those are the people, I'm hoping over time anyway, that will be around in 10 years, that the advocate owners. So that's what we try to do. So last year, right, we're trying to find time to balance between vendor shows, work, travel to and vendor shows, and the whole summer. All this stuff, rinse and repeat. Social media every day. When your TikTok views are up, you can post once a day. When everything seems to hit and go viral and you get engagement, you can post once a day. And then TikTok changes their algorithm, Facebook changes their algorithm, then you gotta post 4 or 5 times a day. You gotta stop what you're doing and make content every day. It turns into a real job. So as we start to progress, right, we bumped up the kitchen, we're in a nicer kitchen, we got more equipment, we got a bigger kettle, we got a bottler. We started looking at getting better all around. We bought a tractor, hopefully this year I get a bigger tractor, but isn't it a good looking tractor? That's the first tractor I've ever owned. It's a 35 horsepower New Holland, and I'd probably do a little more with it than it was designed to do, but it is what it is. This is wood mulch. I have a sawmill right down the road. I can get a 53-foot walking trailer full of sawdust or wood mulch for $100. So I'm actually, yesterday I had 4 of them delivered. So we start looking at, this is real, this is gonna happen. We're gonna start investing some money. We're gonna start making better decisions. Where hopefully you guys will all start. And this, this is back to the why, right? We're starting to get into more grocery stores. This is at a vendor show. This is my daughter Caroline. She loves to go to these things. She would just quit school right now and just travel to all the vendor shows with me. Has nothing to do with all the candy she gets at the vendor shows, craft shows. But you have to, if you're gonna go into any business and it's just about the money, I'm gonna reiterate, this might not be the best one. Because it's hard work. And you are, at this point, still, so some of these people sitting in the back row, they've been trailblazing for years, but you're still in the front. I mean, am I wrong? We're still in the beginning stages of elderberry. We're not cranberries. We're not blueberries. Maybe, but that will be people like you. So we start, you always, as in the immortal words of Dwight Schrute, always be selling it. My family almost hates to go out in public with me because people know me from TikTok. I mean, I'm not like super TikTok famous or anything, but people will randomly come up to me and they're like, "You're the Elderberry guy from TikTok." And then my wife, you can just see her, she's like, "Oh, there goes a half an hour of my life." And then, you just have to advocate, because you never know. They might buy a bottle of syrup, they might start a farm. You never know. So we start operating, right? I just bought this kettle. I think we have 2 or 3 batches through this thing. So I went from, and I missed one. There's an intermediate kettle, bladder press between this one. And that's why I'm really excited about what's outside too. This is nice. This will do, I think it's a 170 liter bladder press. The one I replaced with this was a 40 liter. And this is as much nicer as my last one was off that little benchtop one. This is the picture I sent to my boss when she asked me if I was really serious, if I was quitting, and if I wanted to come back to work. I said, "No, I'm good." And I'm so far in debt I have to sell all the syrup. No. And so that's another thing. And I'm not the guy to lecture on debt management or financial, maybe the last guy's a better guy. But be very careful with that. It's really easy to buy stuff. When you talk about farms and agriculture, your bank, they love to throw money at you. That's the one. Maybe the government's kind of harder, but the banks, they like to lend money for agriculture. It is easy to get out of hand with that. But we've been that's the one thing I've decided ahead of time. Do you have a question?
How did you pitch to your bank for financing? Because a lot of times, especially crop farmers, actually have a harder time getting financing from banks.
I'm really good friends with the vice president of the bank. So that goes into personal connections, right? So everybody knows somebody, everybody's friends with somebody. I work through a small town bank, and I used to work with the bank vice president's husband. She started as a teller. I worked with him 20 years ago, and we've been friends ever since, and now she runs the bank, and I literally can just walk in, and sometimes I have to say, "Are you sure you should give me this money? Can we run the numbers on this one?" But that's the other thing, it's really, personal connection is important. Connections with community members, connections with other farmers, connections with financial, resources, because it can get overwhelming. This goes into the other, this was the intermediate well idea I had. This was another genius. So this isn't an hydrous tank, but it's got water in it. I bought that because I thought I was going to use, that was the upgrade from the IVC tote in the back of the truck. It didn't work so well, just beat my truck up. My neighbor, who's a retired executive of some sort, one day he's like, "You need a well." And I was like, "Yes, I do. It's going to cost me about $15,000. He's like, "I got an idea." He's like, there's a well drilling machine on an auction, I'm going to buy it for you. And I was like, "Well, you don't need," I said, "What's it cost? I'll buy it." He's like, "I just want to see if it works." So he goes and has anybody seen one of these things? It's an ice auger motor, or an earthquake, for drilling post holes on a rig, and you hook up a line pipe to it and you drill down. And I made it about 17 feet. It didn't hit water, but I made it about 17 feet. It took me 2 days. So that's one more thing to put on my resume, it's a well driller. Then I had to have real well drillers come out and pull a pipe out of the ground when they dug my well. But so this was my idea. Had I been on sandy loam ground or something like that, but when they ended up drilling my well, they say the clay goes down 46 feet, so I was about a third of the way there. But anyway, I tried. So that was, and we had to pick the muddiest day of the world of the season to do it so that we could get everything stopped. But so this is one of the things I tried before I made a good decision. That was the good decision, right? Calling real professionals. And put this in your plan. Put water in your plan, put mulch in your plan, figure out how you can, food, weeds, and water. Those should be the first three things you talk about when planting elderberry. So we got some real well drillers out. Thankfully, we had a good wet year that year anyway, but this is the result. I think this picture was taken last summer, and this well would have been in 2022. So we're starting to see real organized progress here. This is actually one of my few survivors. I revere this plant. This was planted in 2021. It's a ranch. Where is she? Could she tell? Could anybody call that as a ranch? But that's a ranch. That's from 2021. I would say 98% of my plants died except this one. And this is the biggest, roundest elderberry I have on my property. So this is what they'll all look like this year, and we've started to move into next steps, getting better equipment, getting more organized, developing our plan for the next steps. We're putting in 3 more acres this year with plans on trying to find equilibrium based on how much syrup we can sell. And then hopefully being able to develop a way to get our berries down to what Chris is working on in Delano, to see how that's gonna work out. But our plan is to kind of find out where our demand is and then live in that range somewhere. We took cuttings this year. I don't know, that's not the most fun thing in the world for me. It was a lot more work than I thought it was, and I sold a lot less of them than I thought I was going to sell. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a big part of my business plan, so it didn't hurt my feelings too much, and it did give me enough cuttings to expand. And so that's one of the good things about elderberries. If you find a variety you like and you grow it, you have an almost infinite source of rejuvenation. You can expand off of your own stock at little to no cost. A $50 to $75 pair of clippers and a bunch of time and some refrigeration. This is what we look like now. We started, I don't know if you can barely see, there's a big compost pile. I mix manure with sawdust as my main two inputs for my soil amendments, just because of their cost and availability. And we're starting to really see positive benefits in our plants. One thing you gotta think about, if you're gonna do all this stuff yourself, especially if you're gonna be on both sides of the fence, if you're gonna grow the elderberries and you're gonna market the products, is you are everything. You know, one day I'm working on the farm, later that day I'm eating a truck to offload bottles. And for reference, this is how trichlor bond ships. So then you gotta think about, do I have something that can lift, I forget what that box pallet weighs, about 3,000 pounds. So, I don't. So I have to meet the truck at the grain elevator. They unload it off the truck, they put it in the back of my truck, and then I drive it home. So that goes to the connections, right? Learn what's available in your area. Eventually, you know, unless you have a bunch of money, or maybe you don't wanna spend the money you have, you can come up with alternative ideas, but they're gonna be more labor, right? So everything that doesn't cost money is gonna be more work, and vice versa.
We got halfway to load.
Oh, I didn't know that was a video. So we're just about done here. How far did that go? So we do this not because it's easy, but because we thought it would be easy. That's kind of the whole moral of the last 4 years of my life. I'll figure it out. I know good people. Yeah.
How are you washing your bottles now, and can you describe your bottling machine?
So I have an express fill, I forget, you got the same bottler. What's it? An express fill forehead, hot fill hold. Yeah, express press fill. They have some of the worst videos, but they're really nice when you call them, not explaining anything. It works good. It's not ideal. I mean,
Is it label too, or are you hand label?
So that's our next upgrade. I just bought an automatic tape dispenser. After that, I'm gonna buy, and so here's my advice. Hopefully there's nobody here from Easy Labeler. Don't buy an Easy Labeler. Buy something automatic right off the bat. If you're gonna do more than 100 bottles at a time, save up the money or spend the money or do whatever. There's several automatic bottlers that are one bottle at a time. Those start at about $2,000, and then there's the horizontal lines, and those start at about $10,000. I don't know what I'm gonna get yet, but that'll be my next purchase. But we went from hand labeling to, right now we're still doing it with, I make, like on the 30th, we're gonna make syrup. I'm gonna make about 1,200 bottles. I'm gonna put every single one of them on with a hand crank, and that'll probably be the last time I do that.
And then washing, are you still washing it?
So this is how I do it. So in the state of Minnesota, if like that pallet of bottles, I'm not required to wash those, but I do. I have a beer brewing bottle rinsing thing. It's got all the nubs on it. You stick the bottles upside down. I put it in a tub of sanitizer water. I run it for 10 seconds. It flushes the inside and the outside, and then I put it on a rack and it goes. We do it right before we stick syrup in it, but it's not required. I would be surprised if your state requires it. It only says that the bottle has to be clean. It doesn't say that you have to wash and sanitize it before. But I do. I would suggest you do too. You never know. We found stuff inside bottles, and all the boxes are packaged up. The bottles are upside down, but they get dusty. They get, depending on where you store them. This is a very cheap insurance.
How bad is insurance for you?
It's not bad. I'm probably underinsured. Right now, I'm mainly insured for my product consumption and for vendor show participation. The rest of the stuff, Actually, I just had a conversation with an insurance guy that I'm supposed to be compiling all my stuff, and he's gonna write me a new quote, but I think I pay like $300 or $400 a year.
That's cheap. If somebody gets sick, claims they get sick drinking your syrup, or use your.
Well, yeah, that's the easy coverage to get. It's all the other coverage. It's the farm labor, the equipment, the building, the liability for consumption of your product is simple. A $2 million general liability is like $25 a month. You can call your State Farm guy, or you can go on Next Insurance, which a lot of them write through anyway. And that's you can do that online in 10 minutes. But it's all of the other facets of your business that'll be more expensive. So here is, if you don't follow me on TikTok, follow me on TikTok. That's our TikTok QR code, that's our website, that's my email. If anybody has any questions, you can ask them now. If you don't like to talk in front of people, or later tonight, well, I'll be here tomorrow, so if you guys can talk to me tomorrow, or next week, email me. I email this stuff every day, so I think that's it. Anybody has any more questions? I'm available. Yes?
And who makes your water for us?
Lackman. It's so I don't know who makes it. So it's made for an orchard supply. Let's see if we can see the. Did you see the thing on there?
What was the question?
Oh, it's on the side. I can get that to you. I can look it up. I think it's Lackman. It's an orchard supply company off the East Coast that buys. They don't make them, but that's who I got it from. It was $1,900. That one, 170 liter press was $1,900.
That's all.
Yeah, that's all. Most of them. So that's the other thing. Most of the presses like this are twice that price. So I don't know why this one is cheaper. The whole thing is stainless steel. All the parts are good. The pressure relief and pressure control valve works wonderful. It swivels to dump. I mean, it does everything that the $4,000 press does, but it costs half as much, and I have no idea why. Sorry about that. That's, what the heck.
So,
Yep.
when do you think you'll be 100% American elderberries?
Not this year. So this year, we're gonna take everything we harvest, and our intention right now is to make an unsweetened juice, just make juice out of it. And then, we're gonna plant, as soon as we have enough berries, or we're close to where buying a balance from somebody. There's a couple of farms in Minnesota that are relatively close that I'm talking to. And when we can come to an agreement, then I'll probably,
So you buy a
juice to
powder?
sell the juice, or is that just the?
just, yeah, I know some other people might be able to talk about how much unsweetened juice they sell, because I've never sold unsweetened juice. Unsweetened juice from dehydrated elderberries is gross. So I don't make it that way. So I'm waiting for our first harvest to make the juice out of it. I anticipate I'll get enough juice this year, or I'll get enough berries to make about 3,000 bottles of juice this year, and hopefully I can sell all that. But, what was your question again?
I was just curious, talking to people, they seem to sell more syrup than juice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a whole other license.
Yeah.
So,
But so I wouldn't have enough. Last year I sold about 10,000 bottles of syrup. I anticipate I'll sell, if past trends, or any indication of future results, I'll sell about 15 or so next year, or this year. And so I won't have enough juice to make syrup for that, so I don't wanna make the change until I can make the change.
What's the
What
price
makes you think you're gonna do better with juice?
What?
What makes you think you're gonna do better with juice? I'm just curious of the motivation.
Unsweetened juice,
Yeah.
or, I don't, but I think I'll have enough to make a good introduction, I think I'll be able to get rid of 3,000 bottles of juice. It wouldn't make a whole lot of effect on my syrup. And I don't wanna blend the two, and I don't wanna have one batch of syrup that tastes this way and one, when I make the change, I just wanna make a wholesale change.
What's the price comparison between American and European berries?
Well, it depends on where you get them, it depends on how much of them you're buying, depends on what quality you're buying. But do we want me to say this out loud? It's a lot cheaper, like, I think my berry spend, yes, it's about a fifth.
So American is cheaper than the European or vice versa?
No, European's cheaper. Now, granted, I use a lot more berries than a lot of the people that make syrup the way that I make it. My berry spend per bottle, what was it in that financial tool? He had it at like $3 or something.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
for raw elderberries, it was $3.50 a pound.
Yeah, so my berry spend would be about $1 for dehydrated. But berries out of your field are better too, so. Yeah, I'll go first row, then I'll go back.
When you switch over to American elderberry, are you gonna market it as American elderberry?
Absolutely.
Price?
Absolutely. No, my goal is to push the American berry. I'm where I'm at because where I started in, we came up with a transition plan that was a lot easier to transition over the course of several years rather than cut it now and take our losses and all that. Go ahead.
Do you sweeten yours with honey?
Yes. And so honey is a trick back too. You have to, for one, you gotta find a honey supplier you trust because not all honey is created equal. You have to really plan your honey spend because honey is not always available year round. I'm fortunate enough that one of my friends, his family runs a fairly large apiary in Minnesota and North Dakota. But with them, so they harvest everything out of the field raw. I get it right from the tap. Their main supplier is a large, I'm not allowed to say because he'll get really mad at me, is a large honey company. And so everything goes to them. Like when it's done, it's gone. So if I want 1 barrel or 50 barrels, I have to tell him in August, I want X amount. He gives me that amount. And if I run out, then I'm out. Like this year, so I started buying 6-pound jugs from him in the kitchen, right? And then I graduated to 50-gallon pails. And then one year he's like, well, you want to buy 10 5-gallon pails, why don't you just buy a 55-gallon barrel and I'll give you a price break on it. So I did. I bought that 1 barrel, that lasted me a year. And then I bought 2 barrels and that lasted me a year on the day. And then I said, okay, I'm never gonna, last year, I'm never gonna use 6 55-gallon barrels of honey, but I'm gonna buy 6 just in case. And then maybe I'll make some infused honey or I'll do whatever. And I ran out in December. And I called him up and I was like, hey, I need some more honey. He's like, sorry. So he's like, oh, I know some people though. So we called around and I had to drive all the way to South Dakota to find honey in bulk anyway. You can find, pails of it or whatever, but if you get to a point to where you're consuming that much honey, you really gotta plan a year in advance. How much honey you're gonna need and where to put it and how to keep it liquid or make it liquid. Because raw honey goes solid. It's like, you just look at it sideways and it's like, solid.
What are your considerations as far as educating American people, the difference between European and American?
So I take a little bit different approach. I try not to, I know some of my peers beat up on the European elderberry. I don't do that. For one, I'd be hypocritical because I'm selling them right now. But 2, I don't feel that's the path to success. I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe, what do they call it? Differentiation is the better path. But it seems, in my opinion, that a lot of people get turned off if you say, those European elderberries are trash, or whatever. I find more success when I accentuate the positives in American elderberry than when I accentuate the negatives in European elderberries. The other side of that is I also have one European elderberry variety growing on my farm, and consequently grows better than every other variety I have. I didn't want it. Chris Patton made me plant it. He said, if you don't want to use it, I know a guy that'll buy it all, that'll buy all the berries and flowers. And then it grew, and it just grew. So I may plan that into my products, I may not, I may do a separate product with it, but just like when talking to peers or people that might view themselves as competitors for my products, I've always have had more success with accentuating the positives of what I'm doing rather than talking about the negatives of what they're doing. And I think the same goes back and forth with elderberry varieties. Yeah.
Have you worked into selling to distributors?
Yeah, so they want money.
Yeah.
So at some point, that will be our business plan. Right now, I don't have the production capacity. Once my wife gets out. Once she's working full time and she's past her probationary period, and so part of our process is we're going to figure out how to become more efficient and how to produce elderberry syrup more, easier. Because right now we're kind of running in jerks and fits, and we're in the process of making a commercial kitchen out of a shop on my property and getting the flow and design. Once that gets going and we can produce elderberry syrup easier, then we'll look at that. But right now, that I've talked to some grocery store chains. I talked to one that has like 17 grocery stores in Minnesota and North Dakota, and they told me what they would want, and they would require me to work through a distributor. And so then you gotta look at, I'm not willing to compromise on the quality of my product, but the only other thing you can do is make more, right? So you're gonna get less per bottle, which is what you're gonna do when you work through a distributor, because they're gonna want to cut. And then when you work with bigger grocery store chains, they want it for less too. I give 25% to my wholesalers, and they're happy with that. I pay for shipping, I give to them for 25% less. But it seems like the bigger the store you get, they want 35 or 50 or whatever. So there's only two ways to get there: is sell more or make your product cheaper. And I found, unless I buy 100,000 bottles at one time, I'm maxed out on all of my inputs, and I don't want to put less elderberry in it. So I'm not at a point where I can triple or quadruple my volume to make up to still make that money. So in due time, but
Looks like Ken asked a question, and we probably need to let Kyle get started.
Yes.
He'll be around this
yeah,
evening.
I'll be here. I'll be here tomorrow.
And tomorrow at the tours, and
So, I just wonder, what kind of ratios did honey versus elderberry?
So ours, that's personal taste. Ours is about 66% juice, about 33% honey. To get as close to my recipe as you can, but and I'm a little off. It's all in the process too. You have to. So we took the basic internet recipe. We took the recipe that's on Midwest Elderberry Cooperative. We made it a few times. We changed it. I worked with a food consultant, and I said, hey, here's how we're making it, but this is what I want. We know what fresh elderberry juice analyzes at. We know all these markers. I want it to look like that until I can be that. And we messed around with heat, soaking time, press time, berry to water ratio, and honey to juice ratio, till we ended up with where we're at. And you just have to, I bought everybody's elderberry syrup and tried it and said, I like that, but until I ended on something that met my criteria and satisfied my taste buds, and it took about 6 months. But So yeah, let's move on. I'm available, whatever you guys wanna talk about. There's my social media stuff if you want that. You can like, follow, and share, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.